Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the chance to catch up with my friend Richard Lawless, chairman of the Lawless Group based out of Dallas, Texas. Richard is one of those guys that people are naturally drawn to. He has an easygoing, soft-spoken way about him that naturally puts people at ease. Perhaps that's why he's been such a successful salesperson over the years. Don't let his mellow demeanor fool you. He is one of the most savvy business owners I've ever met. He took a regional manufacturer rep agency and has turned it into a national presence by diversifying, recruiting great talent, and picking up on emerging trends. I truly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do too. This episode is brought to you by my friends at Moblico. Since 2010, Moblico's mission has been to help wholesale distributors, manufacturers, and contractors improve customer service, expedite orders, engage, and expand their customer base. They've helped hundreds of companies who have fallen behind executing their mobile digital plans bridge the technology gap. Beyond two-way communication messaging, Moblico offers one-to-many targeted broadcast solutions. Imagine communicating new product offerings, special events, or even service disruptions instantly to the right customer segment. If you've been curious about how mobile technology can help your company or are looking to upgrade your current solution, check out what Moblico has to offer at www.moblicosolutions.com. That's MOBLICO solutions.com. And be sure to let them know you heard about them on the Distribution Talk podcast. All right. Well, hey, Richard, thank you so much for coming on Distribution Talk. It's always a pleasure to see you, sir.
Absolutely. Same here, Jason. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure. Well, you've got a whole lot of things cooking, my friend, and you've had a lot of things cooking for a long time, but why don't we go back to the beginning? How did you get started? Maybe in the distribution world or in the rep business? You tell me where you want to start. We can go as early as you want.
Okay. Well, I started in the rep business in 1976, right after I graduated from college. I moved to Dallas and went to work for a manufacturer's rep firm called A.H. Devaney and Company. Mm-hmm. And Jason, they were probably one of the oldest agencies in the United States. They were formed around the turn of the century in the 1900s.
Okay.
And very, very old company. And at that time, in the 70s, late 70s, or, for 100 years, wholesale hardware and those types of people were the largest distributors in the state of Texas and the surrounding areas for us. And so my boss, he was in that, as well as some plumbing, and he was into some construction products. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, about 3 years into that gig with him, who he became a very, very close friend of mine, he got sick and he was unable to work. And so he had this partner that I knew I couldn't work with long term. And so, I just made the decision, okay, I'm going to start my own business, because I didn't have a clue what I was thinking and talking about at that time. But I went ahead and I went and talked to the gentleman's name was Chap Anderson. I went and talked to Chap and told him what I was going to do. Yeah. And he actually said, well, how can I help? And he helped me get the first line I had. So was able to part that relationship. He soon died after that. And then I started my venture into this business. And I got to tell you, it wasn't easy. I was back at that time, I didn't have much. I had that one line and then I started grabbing some other things just to get some income out of us. So honestly, I was selling just about anything and everything I could get my mitts on to make a little bit of money. And that kind of went on for a while. And it was just me, and I was traveling 4 states by myself. I happened to run into a girl named Janice at that time, who eventually became my wife. And fortunately, she allowed me to do all this travel, which back then, you hear these things from these old people, but we used to be on the road for 2 weeks at a time because you couldn't afford to come home, so on and so forth. So I would dictate and she would translate. And that's how I was doing my business and communicating with my factories and my customers and so forth. and then was able to pick up a person or two. But the real turning point in my rep business, my life in that, was in about 1981. I was able to kind of con my father into coming into business with me, and we became partners.
Oh, yeah.
My father at one time, Jason, was the general manager of Igloo Corporation. And when he was there, they always used reps. And then they sold that company, and he ended up in another one. And with that company, they used reps. And so he was a big believer in that. And so, we were able to get him back from Michigan back to Texas, and we became partners. And that really was a major league turning point because he had some expertise and experience that I was lacking. I was very anxious to be successful, and I didn't mind traveling and selling and all that, and I did it fairly well with that. But that was really a big change in the business. And then, so we had that relationship for about 20 years, and then he retired. And then, we started, while he was there for the 20 years, we had an opportunity in about 1982 to acquire a company. And when we acquired this company, we were acquiring some new products, and we were going into new channels of distribution that we had never been in before. And we also were introduced to the warehouse business. And so in 1982, we started that, and we kind of built off that. But it's one of those things. It's the rep business. You got 30-day contracts. You think you're doing really well with somebody one day, and the next day you no longer represent them anymore. You get the see you later letter, and
you get the Dear Richard letter. Yeah, Dear Richard, guess what?
It's not always fun, and it really creates some really tough times at nights that you worry about all this kind of stuff because you're not in control.
So, Richard, if I could stop you for a sec.
Sure.
For our listeners, a lot of people don't know what that 30-day contract looks like. So would you mind explaining that a little bit? I hate it myself. I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, but I will let you explain it.
It is a standard in the manufacturing world that if you use a manufacturer's rep, that you have a contract and an agreement, and usually that agreement covers a specific territory and a specific time, but it also has a clause in there that they can terminate your relationship with a 30-day notice anytime that they deem to do that. And you can as well. Mm-hmm. But in some cases, like with us, as time's gone on, we've been able to extend some of those. But when you extend them, Jason, it's a double-edged sword.
Because you extend them and you got them.
You got them. And if you decide you're going to break the contract, well, you got some time too, that you got to allow that to happen and allow it that, that's ethically right and legally right. But 30-day contracts are things that the whole industry lives on. And so, you're really never guaranteed anything for a year at a time.
Yeah.
But we've always said, hey, you produce, you don't lose.
Or until the next VP comes rolling in and decides he has a better way of doing it.
It's totally different. No, we've all experienced that. But, so you live by these rep contracts. But you're lucky when you sell a business, if you can sell it, you can sell those contracts. And so it works in some ways.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. That's something I want to get to is some of the acquisition stuff that you have done as of more recently over the last probably, 10 years or something like that, 5 to 10 years, and how that 30-day contract might play havoc in that that little transaction. But let's go on. You got into the stocking business, it sounds like.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, back in the 80s.
Yes, sir. We did. And as time's gone on, we've expanded that. We're real believers in the logistics component of our business. We believe that if we can have products somewhere close to the ultimate consumer and distributor, gives us a little bit of an advantage. So I think today we have probably close to 600,000 square feet of warehouse space that we, work with. And then we have 18 other warehouses that we operate in addition to with our water business. So we're really big into that. We believe in that. We're finally learning a little bit about it. We probably first started making our first really money out of that about a year ago after 40. But, it's kind of become part of one of the pillars of the business.
Sure.
And we rely on it heavily.
Well, I think that, folks started similar to you where they'll get in and they'll do they'll be repping a line, and they'll pull the commission and they'll, go out on the road for multiple days at a time like you did early on. And then eventually there's that either nudge from a supplier from one of the manufacturers you represent, or you just desire to become a landlord and do some real estate, and you decide to stock product. And, it's interesting. I think there are those that avoid it, avoid stocking, and I think they can make a pretty good living 30 days at a time. They can make a pretty good living.
Right.
But I think that when you get into that next level where you're talking about stocking, you get a whole new set of problems, but you also can insulate yourself a little bit as well.
I agree with that. I've got a lot of friends that even here in Texas, they've elected not to go the warehouse route and been very, very successful and don't have all those headaches that you have when you get into that part of the business. But we've just always felt like it was really good for us. It gives you a little bit more contact with your customer base, and they're here all the time. And, we kind of like our customers coming to our place and picking up stuff, but it's worked out very, very well for us throughout time.
So when you made the pivot, you switched over to say, you know what, I'm going to start stocking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What was kind of that big aha moment for you? I mean, what kind of, what was the, oh my God, what did I get myself into moment for you?
Well, there's been a cast of characters since we've been doing this. And we put stuff in this warehouse that we probably shouldn't have ever done. But I think that when the aha moment for us would have been, it had given the opportunity maybe to get some lines that we might not have been able to get without it.
Yeah.
And then grow those lines. And it's interesting because when you do have the warehouse, you obviously have more contacts within a manufacturing group than you do if you're just a salesperson in that group, because we're messing with everybody from the logistics and the financial and all that. So you get a little bit more intertwined, which kind of helps and certainly develops the partnership. And it secures the relationship just a little bit better than maybe if you don't have all that stuff. But we don't ever say no to a manufacturer if they want to add more product and we can make money out of it. But so we're going to continue to go down that path.
Well, I remember, again, probably one of the last times you and I got together was back at John Christie's and, down in Orlando.
Yeah.
And, and I went down and took a look at their place. And, if I recall correctly, I think it was 2009, 2010 that they had built the Taj Mahal down there. He had decided,
At the wrong time.
Yes, he did. At the wrong time. They built the Taj Mahal, and then all of a sudden the whole bottom falls out of the market. And you're stuck with this big warehouse. And what am I going to do with this thing? Now, fortunately, they got smart and they did, they were creative. But that's got to be a scary moment. Once you get into the warehousing business, a blip in the economy, a good sized recession, man, all of a sudden you've got real estate and stuff that you're going to have to pay for.
You really do. You really do. There's a lot more risk. And the way the warehouse business is you have, just like anything, the 80-20 when it relates to the people that are actually helping you finance that business of that. So if you lose one of those lines, it's 20% of your income coming in. It can get dicey.
Sure.
But you always got to be working the traps, Jason. I mean, you always got to be looking for another one, and they can fill that spot if something bad happens, and,
Yeah.
But I think that the hardest thing about getting in that business is just to give them the dedication to the right people to help you run it. It's a commitment. And some people try to do it kind of, I got a word, but I can't use that online. But,
by the seat of their pants? Is that something? Yeah.
By the seat of their pants. And it doesn't work out. And it costs them a lot of money, and they can take them out. 08 and 09, they were trying times. We had all these space, and there's about 100,000 square foot I would have liked to have gotten rid of, but landlord wouldn't do it. You just had to work your way through it and get creative with what space you had, make something out of it.
Sure. And again, kind of going back to what John, I mean, they got into kind of a 3PL business, and they got doing stuff for QVC, if I remember right. And they did some other cool stuff, some jewelry stuff. They did all kinds of interesting just to keep that building out there.
Right. Andrea's a very smart lady. She got into the
Absolutely.
sunbum stuff,
That's right.
and
Sunbum.
so,
That was it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That was it.
just, I can remember when they had, one little rack, just a part shelving of that. And now they have probably close to 600,000 or 700,000 square feet of sunbum. So they've been just wildly successful with that.
Yeah.
She's a pretty smart lady, actually.
She is. Oh, yeah. I
yeah.
remember going down to visit her and she, shared kind of what they had done. But I think, again, it's being able to pivot, and scramble and realize that it doesn't have to be, in this case, construction supply stuff. I could put anything on this shelf. If somebody's going to pay me to move it, I'm in.
Right. And she was one of the first people, I think, that stepped out there and did something that was not one of the lines that they actually carried.
Right.
I remember because it was like 30 days after they finished that building, everything just fell through the floor.
I mean, imagine looking at that mortgage, it's like all of a sudden, and
yeah, it wasn't just a lease, it was a mortgage.
I had made my first payment yet and the bottom falls out on me. It's like, uh-oh, we're in trouble.
That's right.
One of the things I think about is when you get into that stocking product and you develop the square footage. I mean, now you've got, well, first of all, you got equipment. So, you got all kinds of equipment, but the software needs have to change pretty dramatically as well.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really do. We run all different kinds of software out of here. Different manufacturers have different programs. And if you want to work with them, you got to adapt or bring in their system along with everything else that you've got if you're going to be doing some consigned stuff. And then your products that you buy, sell, you could be running on different operating systems. I think we run on about 6 different systems throughout our facility, just because, like Southwire, they got theirs and Werner's got theirs, and you got to, and it's separate to what you're doing. But that becomes a part of the business that you have to start bringing some expertise in, or you're going to fall flat on your face.
You bet.
With the big guys.
You bet. Yeah, it's again, you're going from, well, I can use QuickBooks just to cover my rep business, and then all of a sudden, oh, can't do that anymore. I gotta get some bigger, tougher software out there.
Right. We were fortunate enough to pick up one of Werner's 6 master locations, and sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for. We're glad we have it. Don't get me wrong, but it's a whole new game.
Yeah.
With what we're doing with them, with some of the other people. So
sure. I think also when somebody makes that jump, over from, again, that commission rep out there to a stocking rep, now it also gives you the opportunity to go, and I think you mentioned it just a little earlier about buy, sell, going into buy, sell, or even developing your own brands, your own lines and things like that. So, well, how did you all step into that side of it?
Well, I stepped into it probably about 19 years ago, maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Had a gentleman that asked me to go into a tool business with him, and I did, and we started traveling to China and all over the Asian areas and started importing product, and got some of my friends in the industry to do the same thing. So we were all in bringing containers in, and that was a little bit of a challenge because it was trying to get some consistency across the country, which was very difficult to do. That was our first real effort. Then we started paring back just a little bit, and then we started buying. We buy a lot of product from Migula Corporation and some people like that that we service our customers with, and we'll let them sometimes bundle. But, the one thing that's always been I've had to be careful with, and Jason, this, you got to be careful making product available to everybody. You got customers and you got partners, and balancing that can be kind of dicey sometimes. We always want to make sure that we treat everybody fairly and ethically and all that kind of stuff, but we don't want to open the house up to everybody. We want to be particular with who we do this, the buy-sell component with, and so forth. Where we actually really changed our business is when we got into actually manufacturing some products.
Yeah.
And we started manufacturing pre-tied wire assemblies and stuff like that, straight wire and all that many years ago. And then we were very fortunate about getting a relationship going with Niagara Water Company. And I don't know whether you want to segue into that or you want me to stay in my lane here, but.
Oh, sure. I want to ask you a couple of questions, though. Some of these, the buy-sell deals. It's interesting that you said that you have to be careful about really who you sell to, who you could allocate product to, and I think, Richard, what's interesting is that thing that you learned 19, 20 years ago has come full circle now, that in the scarcity of product that we saw in the last couple of years, that you can't be all things to all people. You can't just take a PO no matter what. You actually have to figure out, well, who am I going to ride with long term? And there are going to be times where you have to say, I'm sorry, I can't sell you.
Right.
And that is a really tough thing for a natural salesperson to say, I'm sorry, I can't sell you.
Well, time's your enemy, right? You only have this certain amount of time. And when you start really looking at it, you just don't have that much time to hang out with a whole heck of a lot of people. You got to pick and choose. You got to do your job. You got to honor your contracts, and that, every manufacturer's got their own customer base that they all believe in, and you got to make sure you take care of that. But the whole buy sell thing is, we've been very careful and kind of creeped into it, but we're in it a pretty big way right now.
Yeah,
we do quite a bit, and it helps finance the business, quite frankly.
And that's why I look at guys who have really stuck on the commission-based deal, and maybe, again, they'll stock some stuff and they'll get a couple nickels extra to put stuff on the floor, and it's never enough extra to put it on the floor. Never.
Right.
But again, when you move into what I think we could all consider like a master distributor type of role there with the buy sell, it does kind of pay for some things that maybe the old commission check didn't.
That's right. That's right. And particularly if you're running a warehouse.
Yeah.
Sometimes you needed what they call in Louisiana a little lanyap. It's a little something extra in order to make it kind of all come together. But the one thing that we've always been very, very careful at this company is, because of the size customers and our relationships with our customers, is we don't want to be known to step on product and add costs. We want to reduce costs wherever we can, and acquisition costs for the most part. But we don't want to add costs and pass it on and then make our customers less competitive. So unless we can get the right deal, we just don't do it.
Right. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's just not worth it. No, it's not.
So you have diversified quite a bit going into not only buy, you have some other things. You got into, as you said, the light manufacturing business with Tidewire, and really a whole ProLine group there that you have. Tell us about, how did you get involved in the water business?
Well, I was actually doing some consulting for Powerade. And, this goes way back, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were looking about trying to get into the powder business and seeing if that was something they could do on a nationwide scale. And Coca-Cola has a lot of different bottling companies that they don't own. And so there's a lot of legal aspects with those people that don't exist with some people out there. The long and the short of this is so many legal aspects there. It made it really difficult for somebody like myself to try to do what they were asking us to do. And during the course of that, to be honest with Jason, down in the petrochemical industry, particularly on the Gulf Coast, people had started moving away from, Igloo, even though it's one of my lines and I love them to death, but people started moving away from some of the coolers, particularly in some of the largest refineries, because of contamination potential issues and so forth. And they were starting to buy water and buy the bottle. And so I just poked around and found a source, and it happened to be Niagara, and caught them at the right time. They were not playing in my space or our space.
Yeah.
They handle probably 85% of all the water in the United States that's sold through Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart, Kroger, those kind of people. But they weren't in our space. And so at the beginning, I was just asking for a little bit of freedom to go into some of the space and get them to support us. And as time went on, we finally were able to forge a contract where we have virtually everything outside of the mass merchandisers and the food business. And it's just been very, very successful for us. And then we paired that up with a product called Overtime.
Yeah, I saw that.
We bought that, or we bought the marketing and sales rights to that worldwide. And that's really helped complement that. And then it's just kind of parlayed. We bought a chemical and a plastic company in Florida. And there's about 7 companies that we own now that are outside the rep business that we're in total control over. The future is in our hands in those things. Now I get to give contracts to people, and it's kind of fun.
Sure. You get to be on this side. And they get 15 days, not 30 days.
Right. But no, it's been just really wildly successful for us. And as we decide we want to expand, it kind of helps us do that.
Sure. Yeah, I recall when some of that happened. I remember California. It was a state that said, hey, no more coolers. No more coolers on job sites. And all of a sudden now you've got all these job sites that they're requiring you to provide bottled water.
That's right.
Which, now you've got a whole plastic problem, but that's all right. We're gonna legislate that away too.
Exactly.
But that was a really interesting one because I recall going down and visiting Jordan down at Acme in San Francisco and looking at stacks and stacks of water bottles. And I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, well, yeah, this is what happened. And so they kind of shared with me. And I'm looking at this. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm envisioning one of these 12-foot stacks of water bottles come crashing down and knowing,
right,
what I know about warehousing and and forklift certifications and things like that. It's like, man, it looks like trouble, but it sounds like it's a pretty good biz.
I think it's a pretty good business. It has transitioned to that for the most part. And if these distributors don't do it, somebody else is going to be doing it. And I think they found when I first started trying to sell it, Jason, when I walked into some companies, you would have thought I had two heads. I mean, selling bottled water, but now it's become a very important product in their portfolio of products. And
isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's just so strange.
The great thing about the relationship we have is it's a good relationship. The guy's privately held.
Yeah.
He's got 40 different locations. So every time he opens a location, we open one too. And it's just a powerful relationship. It's just fun. It's one of the things in my life I really, really enjoy.
Selling water, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
That's great. Well, I mean, again, you said 7 different, companies that you own, kind of outside that rep business. But one of the other things is that you've had the good fortune of being able to acquire other rep firms.
Correct.
How did that start? And well, you said you did one way back when. I mean, that was a long, long time ago. But thinking about more recently that they've started to appear in front of your face.
Well, we've been expanding for a long time, going all the way back to 1982 by purchasing agencies in the state of Texas or our 4 states. And I think we've bought around 11 agencies in the time frame. And, we're still looking at that where it makes sense. And as we want to expand, the challenges with expansion, particularly if you got a good network of friends out there, is you're expanding into other sandboxes. And that can be challenging because these are your friends and now you're all in the same sandbox. Although there's always plenty there for everybody, but that's the difficult dynamic. But yeah, I mean, if it's a good business and it gives us some more products and differentiation of some stuff, we're interested in continuing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've noticed again in the last few years, I've noticed this expansion. I guess you've become more public about the way that you've expanded. I mean, I think that's the other thing is that perhaps it was a little quieter. Maybe you were quiet in these companies. It looks like you're getting bigger and bigger footprints. I mean, that's really what it was looking like before. But now, if you look at it, you've decided to hire, presidents of these different regions and all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, I'm looking here at, we've got a Lawless East, we got a Midwest, we got a West. I mean, you got them all over the place here.
Right. And, where it makes sense, I mean, obviously, it appears we're looking at a national footprint and, that is something that we do have interest in. If it makes sense.
Yeah.
Jason, no sense of going anywhere that doesn't make sense, but there is some opportunities out there right now that we're looking at. And, I think we'll enlarge our footprint just a little bit more, and the thing that's just very interesting to us is the interest that large manufacturers have in watching what we're doing.
Sure.
And now starting to participate in part of the program. And then when you're looking at some national entities or distribution companies out there, they like the idea of being able to have a turnkey person that can go from coast to coast. But it's challenging. I got to tell you, it's very, very challenging. It's all about the people. You got to find the right people. And that's very, very difficult today. Very difficult.
Yeah. Well, some of the people, I'll be honest with you, some of the people that you've tapped to lead these different pieces, you've done really well.
Well, thank you.
You know, some of the people I love running into people. I'm like, oh, so you're on the Lawless team now. And so, but these are all top-notch people. So you've done real well, my friend, catching the right people. So,
well, I think that's key. I really do. And I've been very blessed to be able to hook up with some of these people, actually.
Well, and I think, Richard, as you expand this footprint and, let's face it, again, make it a little louder. You're not shy anymore about what's going on here. And people are seeing how these, how this is coming together, that as people are aging in this business, as they do, that these opportunities are going to come up for you even more. I mean, especially going in from you've made a lot of friends over the years, just in the way that you have done business and how you've treated people. But I think that's really opening up these opportunities, because let's face it, it is not easy to sell a rep business.
No.
That's a tough, I mean, typically you have to have kids and you have to hand it to them. That's the only thing you got.
This has been the tradition for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's not easy. It's not easy to sell. When you sell one, whoever's buying it's got to be able to maintain those contracts. And,
right.
If they don't have, I guess, some history out there, the manufacturer's kind of taking a little bit of a risk, but it can be very tricky because each one of them are different.
Yeah.
Everybody that owns their own, but it's their baby. And particularly if it's been one for 40 years, like me, it's kind of hard. And you have your ways and you're setting your ways. And, your way was the right way and it got you where you were. And that's why somebody like us wants to buy it. But one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that as we do grow, that we're able to bridge all this stuff together. And that's the challenges we have now is making sure that these presidents are all on the same page. And, there's the common thread going through the group that makes sense. And it's coming around.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time, but it's coming around.
Well, I noticed, you tapped somebody to really kind of oversee this whole thing for you with Jack. And
yeah,
I think that just makes it a little easier on you. You don't have to run around as much. Although he does like to set up meetings for you, but
oh my God, he does. Every time I turn around, well, what do you got going on? And it's great because I'm not the one having to set the meetings anymore.
That's right.
Jack keeps me extremely busy. Let me tell you that. He's a good man.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a really good guy and he knows what he's doing. And again, I feel very thankful for finding somebody like him and him having the interest to help us out because my limitations are there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think that's it. You find the right people. And I think that's really the goal of any president or owner, or operator of these companies is to create that executive team that can sustain the business. I've always had kind of a rule of thumb that if you can leave the business for 5 weeks on a vacation and come back and it's still running, you own a business. And if you can't, you own a job.
Well, that's probably very true. I like that.
And it sounds to me like you have built a business, my man.
Well, we're getting there. My wife just goes, when? I mean, I'm 68 years old, but I will tell you, Jason, I still love what I do.
Oh, I know you do. I can see it in your face, man. I know
it's fun.
Yeah. It
gets challenging and and I don't think anybody that's ever had a rep business will tell you it's easy because it's not.
No.
It's not easy. And owning a distributorship's not easy. It's challenging. And every day's a new day with new problems, but it's been a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now you've definitely set the standard, at least the industry I grew up in, the vertical I grew up in. So, I'll tell you, eventually somebody's going to knock on your door, and say, hey, are you ready to hang up the cleats? Or
that does happen, but I'll tell you what, I think that assembling the right team is really one of those things that I really want to do before I'm on that far back nine now. And so, you know what I mean? So,
okay, I got you.
And I want to make sure the table is set with all the right people. And I think we're getting there. It's getting closer. for sure.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Richard, thanks so much for taking the time with me, man. This is great. It's been great catching up. And I love seeing the progression, man, from where you were, one line, and running it all the way up. And not only the rep business, but all the other businesses you're involved with. I mean, it's just, man, it's fun stuff.
It is fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It's been fun. I think a lot of the family and you guys have, the family's built a wonderful business. You're doing great.
Yeah. Hey, it got even better when they kicked me out. It got even better when they kicked me out.
Sometimes that happens,
As it happens, man. And I'm, hey, and you wind up doing podcasts. I mean, the full circle. So.
Yeah, now you got Marshall with you, huh?
And I got Marshall with me. So we're going to make a run of it. So it is funny how incestuous this business is, how we're pretty tight-knit folks. So anyway. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. And gosh, I wish you all the success on this. And I'm excited to hear what the next adventure is.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.